Okay, settle in. Because what we're about to explore, well, it feels like stepping directly into a childhood dream, you know?
Yeah.
The kind fueled by late-night movie marathons.
Oh, yeah.
Picture those pulse-pounding speeder bike chases from Return of the Jedi, the rush of wind, that breathtaking low-level flight through forests, just pure exhilaration.
Right, I know exactly what you mean. That feeling.
Well, that visceral image,
Huh?
it's maybe not confined to a galaxy far, far away anymore.
Yeah.
That's the kind of energy swirling around the Volonaut Airbike.
It truly is something to behold, isn't it? The unveiling just a couple of weeks back, May 1st, 2025, the single-person jet-propelled hoverbike.
Hmm.
It definitely sparked a global conversation, went way beyond just the tech circles, I think.
Lily.
There's this immediate, almost instinctive connection when you see it. It taps into that deep-seated human fantasy of, like, effortless personal flight.
Exactly, that feeling of the future is now turned up to 11. But, okay, as we peel back the layers of that sleek carbon fiber and those, let's face it, thrilling promises of 200-kilometer-per-hour speeds, there's a core question we need to really dig into for you. Is the Volonaut Airbike a genuine paradigm shift in how we might, get around? Or is it maybe destined to become another one of those captivating gadgets that ultimately never quite takes off, so to speak?
Yeah, good pun.
That's the heart of what we're exploring today.
And right at the forefront of this whole push into individual air travel is Thomas Pesquet. Now, that name might ring a bell for some listeners.
Yeah, the Jetson 1 guy.
Exactly.
Oh.
He's the innovative force behind the Jetson 1, that personal electric aircraft that's already been making headlines and, let's be honest, emptying wallets, given its pretty substantial price tag.
Right, it wasn't cheap.
No. But Pesquet's prior success in actually getting a personal flying machine off the ground, well, it adds a significant layer of intrigue and I think a certain level of expectation to this new venture.
Precisely. This isn't some, abstract concept from a total newcomer. This is someone who's actually delivered a working flying machine before. So the airbike isn't just appearing out of nowhere. But the fundamental question is still there. Is this a moment to truly get excited about the future of personal transport? Or should we maybe file this undeniably cool idea that's unlikely to ever be a widespread reality? Let's delve into the specifics. First things first. What exactly is the Volonaut Airbike?
Well, in essence, it's a solo vehicle, engineered for flying, basically. Its debut just recently, it immediately commanded attention because its design is just so minimalist and, frankly, quite advanced looking.
Yeah, it looks slick.
It lacks wings, it doesn't have propellers like you might expect. Instead, it relies on what they're calling a directional jet propulsion system.
Right. And the visual echoes of those speeder bikes we mentioned, they're unmistakable.
Yeah.
That's clearly a deliberate choice, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Pure Star Wars vibe.
And the performance figures being floated are certainly grabbing attention. We're talking about a potential top speed of 200 kilometers per hour.
Which is seriously fast.
Coupled with the ability to not only hover steadily, but also glide through the air. That's a speed that would leave most ground traffic eating its dust.
Indeed. And it manages this, supposedly, with an incredibly light frame. It tips the scales at just 39 kilograms.
39 kilos. That's wow.
Yeah, significantly less than even a small motorcycle. This remarkable lightness comes from using a lot of carbon fiber and components made with 3D printing.
Okay, so high-tech materials.
Exactly. Both are becoming pretty standard in aerospace engineering now, mainly for their amazing strength-to-weight ratio. I mean, when you think that a typical motorbike can feel like a brick in comparison, it really highlights how incredibly light this machine is.
But then we get to the central puzzle,
Right.
this mysterious jet propulsion system. It's mentioned with a certain flair, conjures up images of raw power. But beyond that initial description, the specifics remain, kind of shrouded in secrecy.
That's a really pivotal point. The absence of traditional propellers is key to its sleek look, and it really sets it apart from many other personal flying vehicle concepts we've seen. But the inner workings of these jets, their efficiency, their power source, these are crucial details that are still largely under wraps.
Okay, but they do emphasize certain user-friendly aspects, right? Like
Yeah.
the view.
Right. A complete 360-degree field of vision for the pilot, which, seems pretty essential when you're moving in 3 dimensions.
Like sex.
And they mention automated hovering and a flight computer designed for stability. This suggests they're aiming for a machine that's relatively accessible to operate. The implication is you won't need, years of intense flight training, at least in principle.
That's the dream, isn't it?
That's the enticing prospect they're presenting, yeah. The idea of a sophisticated flight computer handling the tricky bits of flying and an auto-hover function, it certainly lowers the perceived barrier to entry, conceptually anyway.
Right.
But the true measure, obviously, will be how these systems actually perform in the real world.
Now let's talk about how this thing even got on our radar, the hype. Volonaut dropped a teaser video, and it's safe to say it just lit up the internet. What was it about that video that made it so compelling?
The visuals were just undeniably captivating. Seeing this streamlined vehicle, like, silently cruising over these diverse landscapes, skimming the desert floor, weaving through a forest canopy,
Yeah, the forest shots were amazing.
and then just holding its position in midair with seemingly no effort, it really tapped into that basic human desire to just fly individually. The video showed an experience that looked both seamless and, honestly, almost magical.
And then came Curveball, the Stormtrooper. You couldn't script that timing better.
Oh, that was something else.
A subsequent video, Ryder fully decked out in Imperial armor, just gliding through the woods. And the timing, right around Star Wars Day, May the 4th,
Yeah.
clearly not a coincidence. What's your take on that as a marketing move?
It's bold and, undeniably effective for grabbing attention. By directly referencing such a universally recognized, beloved piece of sci-fi, they instantly connect with this huge cultural thing, evokes wonder, excitement.
Definitely got people talking.
Yeah, it's a clever way to generate that initial buzz, but it also perhaps subtly shifts the focus towards the cool factor rather than the basic tech specs.
Which it certainly did. Social media just exploded. I saw comments everywhere calling it sci-fi becoming reality. Someone else said it was the coolest thing since sliced bread figured out how to toast itself.
Ha, that's a good one.
That comment from @dudespostingws, we're literally living in a sci-fi movie now,
Huh.
really seemed to capture the mood. And at Rainmaker 1973 was totally sold on the speed, the jet propulsion idea. But
Yeah.
hang on, we've seen this kind of intense tech hype before, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. The Segway is the classic example, isn't it?
Yeah.
Heralded as this revolutionary transport mode going to change cities forever. And while it did find its niche uses, mall cops, city tours,
Right.
that grand initial vision never really happened on a mass scale. History is just littered with examples of exciting new tech that ultimately didn't quite live up to the initial hype.
Which brings us back to Thomas Bataan and his earlier creation, the Jetson 1. Now, that machine did actually fly. Came with a hefty price tag around $128,000 and offered something like 20 minutes of flight time. How does his track record influence how we should view the Airbike?
Well, Patan's success with the Jetson 1 undeniably lends a degree of credibility to this Volonaut project. He's shown he can take a personal flight concept from idea to, well, a tangible working machine.
Yeah, it's not just vaporware.
Exactly. This isn't just speculation from some unknown startup, but it also sets certain expectations. The Jetson 1, while definitely impressive, was also very expensive and had real limits on how long it could stay up.
20 minutes isn't long.
Not really. So while his past achievements are a positive sign, they also maybe hint at the potential realities for the Airbike's eventual cost and its operational limits.
Okay, so we've got the cool visuals, we've got a proven inventor, but the big question is still hanging there. Is this thing actually flying? Or are we just watching a very clever, very persuasive marketing campaign?
Based on what we're seeing from reputable tech news sources like New Atlas, Gear Junkie, the evidence seems pretty strong that actual flight testing has happened.
Really?
Yeah, reports indicate the Airbike's been undergoing trials since at least May 2023. There's confirmation of it hovering, gliding, and even doing unassisted landings. So it doesn't look like it's just CGI. It seems to be a real physical machine demonstrating actual flight.
Okay, that's significant. And the all that carbon fiber and 3D printing, that's not just for show, right?
Not at all. These are established materials and methods in modern aerospace, especially when the main goal is cutting weight without losing structural strength. I mean, the fact that the Airbike weighs less than, say, a decent microwave oven, it really shows how effective these advanced materials are.
And Pataan sticking with it feels important too. Bringing the Jetson 1 to market suggests he has the engineering chops to make something like the Airbike work.
Seems like.
Plus, the Airbike's minimalist, functional design kind of echoes the Jetson 1's stripped-down look.
Yeah.
And the flight computer, the auto hover. I mean, it sounds advanced, but maybe not totally outlandish given how far drone tech has come.
Precisely. The basic tech for automated flight and stabilization, it's pretty well established in the drone world. Now, adapting and scaling that for a larger vehicle carrying a person, that definitely presents complex engineering challenges, sure, but it's not inherently impossible.
But then we hit those sketchy areas, as some people have put it. And the biggest one has got to be the lack of detail about the jet propulsion. Directional jet propulsion. Sounds cool, sounds powerful, but what does it actually mean in practice?
That is indeed the crucial unanswered question. The ambiguity around this core tech is both, intriguing and also raises legitimate concerns. Without knowing the specifics, are we talking tiny turbine engines, some advanced ducted fan they're just calling jets?
Yeah, what kind of jets?
Exactly. Without that, it's incredibly hard to really evaluate the feasibility and efficiency of the whole design. It's like being promised a revolutionary new cake, but only being told the secret ingredient is magic.
Huh? Good analogy.
We need more concrete info about the actual components, the underlying process.
And the videos themselves, yeah, they look amazing, but they don't really show the takeoffs and landings in detail. Gear Junkie pointed that out specifically. Why might that be missing?
Well, the lack of detailed footage for takeoff and landing could very well suggest there are still limitations or ongoing development challenges with those critical flight phases.
Right, those are often the trickiest parts.
Exactly. They're often the most demanding maneuvers for any aircraft. So the lack of focus on them in the promos might indicate they aren't quite as smooth or controlled yet as the gliding and hovering demos seem to imply.
And we can't ignore the Stormtrooper video with the Star Wars music dubbed over it. I mean, super clever marketing, sure, but does it maybe hurt the credibility of the actual tech being shown?
It does create a certain ambiguity, doesn't it? Blurs the lines between a genuine tech demo and just a viral marketing stunt designed to get maximum clicks.
Yeah.
Generating excitement is important, obviously, but relying heavily on the look and sound of a fictional universe can make it harder to objectively assess what the Airbike can actually do. It kind of prioritizes the vibe over pure facts.
And naturally, the internet being the internet, there were whispers on social media about green screens, maybe hidden cranes in the videos.
Always happens.
Right. While there's no actual proof of that, the lack of technical transparency definitely leaves room for that kind of speculation, doesn't it?
That's the inevitable result when there is an information vacuum. When key technical details are held back, it naturally leads to guesswork and, yeah, sometimes skepticism. More detailed info, maybe some unedited footage would certainly help clear up some of those doubts.
All right, so it looks like it can fly, but there are still a whole lot of question marks hanging in the air, quite literally. Let's bring this back down to earth for a second and talk cost. No official price announced, no firm launch date. What can we reasonably guess based on the Jetson 1?
Well, considering the Jetson 1 retailed for around $128,000, it's highly probable that Volonaut Airbike will also be in a very, very high-end price bracket.
So not exactly an everyday commuter vehicle price.
Not even close. The advanced materials, the complex propulsion system, the likely small initial production runs, it all adds up to a significant cost. That phrase, "you'd have to sell a kidney," might not be too far off for most people.
Ouch.
The specialized nature of the parts and the probable low initial manufacturing scale just don't allow for mass market affordability. Not yet, anyway.
And Volonaut's a rather vague timeline in the near future. That's pretty standard tech speak, isn't it? Could mean anything.
Exactly. In the tech development world, near future is notoriously flexible. Realistically, it could mean anywhere from a year or two to, well, many years, or maybe never if they hit major technical or regulatory roadblocks. It's a phrase that gives them wiggle room, but doesn't offer much concrete hope for an imminent release.
So is this more likely to be something we'll actually see people buying someday, or is it maybe more about generating buzz and attracting investors for the tech itself?
It's probably a bit of both, strategically. Showing off a working, visually stunning prototype like the Airbike, that definitely generates huge interest and attracts potential investors.
Sure.
But given Patan's track record with the Jetson 1, there seems to be a genuine ambition to actually bring personal flight vehicles to market. The critical question is whether the Airbike can overcome the big technical and regulatory hurdles it faces and actually become commercially viable beyond, a super niche, wealthy enthusiast market.
Let's dig a bit deeper into the science. Can a jet-powered hoverbike, especially one this light and open, actually work in a practical, sustainable way? We've seen other attempts at personal flyers over the years.
That's a crucial point. The history of hoverbike development is full of ambitious projects. Most of them relied on props or ducted fans for lift.
Right, like Hover Surfer Aerofest.
Exactly. And while some of those did fly, they often had issues. Bulky designs, super noisy, not very maneuverable, short flight times. The Airbike's radical shift away from props, using this jet system, That's what makes it really stand out. And like you said, it makes it a bit of a technological wild card.
So what are the immediate challenges of using jets in such a small, open vehicle?
Well, jet engines, even tiny ones, are powerful. That's how they can aim for those high speeds. But they're also thirsty for fuel,
Right, fuel consumption.
and they generate a lot of heat. In a lightweight, open design like this, managing fuel for a decent flight range and dealing with the heat, especially keeping the pilot safe from it, those are huge engineering challenges.
Yeah, you don't want your legs getting cooked.
Precisely. And as we've said, the lack of detail on how Volonaut is tackling these fundamental issues is a big gap in our understanding right now.
And think about the weight. The bike itself is only 39 kilos. Add a rider, say 80, 100 kilos. That's a decent amount of mass those jets need to lift and then push along at high speed.
Absolutely. Thrust to weight ratio. It's fundamental in aviation. The jets have to produce enough upward force thrust to counteract the total weight and have enough power left over for control and maneuvering. Achieving that balance in such a small, light package, it's a remarkably tough engineering problem, like needing an engine that's both incredibly strong and incredibly light.
Then there's the flight computer and the auto hover. You mentioned drone tech. But
Yeah.
scaling that up for a human, going potentially 200 kph, that feels like a whole different ballgame for reliability, doesn't it?
It certainly is. While the basic principles, gyros, accelerometers, smart software are similar to drones, the consequences of a system failure in a manned aircraft at high speed are obviously far, far more severe. You need multiple layers of redundancy, robust fail-safes. Safety has to be absolutely paramount.
And just think about the physics.
Mm-hmm.
Jet propulsion isn't known for being super efficient compared to electric props, is it? So the Jetson 1's 20-minute flight time, maybe that's an optimistic guess for the Airbike. Could it be even shorter?
That's a very reasonable guess. Jet engines, just by how they work, are typically less energy efficient than electric systems. So unless Volonaut has made some really groundbreaking breakthrough in small jet tech that massively boosts fuel efficiency, it's quite likely the Airbike's flight time will also be pretty limited, probably in that same ballpark as the Jetson 1.1, maybe even less.
And the noise. We see it gliding silently in the videos, but come on, jet engines are loud. And open design just amplifies that. So that peaceful glide through the forest might actually sound more like,
Oh, yeah.
well, someone called it a lawnmower with a jet engine strapped to it.
That's a rather vivid and probably quite accurate analogy. The complete lack of sound dampening in an open cockpit, plus the high-frequency whine typical of even small jets, it would almost certainly be a loud, maybe even disruptive experience, not just for the rider, but for anyone nearby, too.
Okay, so how does the Volonaut Airbike stack up against other attempts at personal flyers we've seen? There have been a few contenders, right?
Yeah, the personal hoverbike scene has seen several ambitious projects. You mentioned HoverSurf's Scorpion 3, Aerofex's Aero X. Those mostly use props or ducted fans, and they often hit walls with stability, noise, short flight times, and just crazy high costs.
Right, remember the X-Turismo from Japan? Looked cool, cost a fortune.
Exactly. Visually striking, but incredibly expensive, and hasn't exactly taken over the skies.
So the Airbike using jets is the main thing that sets it apart in this field.
It is, yeah. Deliberately moving away from props is probably its most distinctive feature. That choice allows for the sleek, wingless look and the potential for higher speeds than many prop designs. But, as we've talked about, that path also brings a whole new set of tricky engineering challenges. Power, fuel, heat.
And then there's the bigger picture. The whole eVTOL market is exploding. Joby Aviation, air taxis, even flying car concepts like Aleph Aeronautics.
Yeah.
Where does a single-seat hoverbike fit into all that?
Right now, hoverbikes like the Airbike are really a niche within that broader personal air mobility landscape. eVTOLs, the air taxis, they're generally aiming for more practical uses, like city commuting over longer distances. They often prioritize passenger capacity, a longer range.
And flying cars want road and air travel.
Right, dual mode function.
Mm-hmm.
The Airbike, at least as it looks now, seems more geared towards recreation or maybe very specialized uses, given the single seat and likely short range.
So while the Airbike's got that killer Star Wars look and Pecan's reputation behind it, that's not enough on its own for success, is it? It ultimately needs to deliver on performance, safety, and eventually some kind of affordability.
Precisely. That initial wave of excitement from the cool design and the novelty factor, it'll eventually give way to hard questions about real-world performance, its actual safety record in different conditions, and what it finally costs. Without solid performance data and a clear path to production and market access, the Airbike risks staying just an impressive tech demo, not a real transport disruptor.
Let's put on our most critical, skeptical hats for a minute. What are the biggest reasons to maybe approach the Volonaut Airbike with, let's say, a healthy dose of caution? Tempered expectations.
Well, the most obvious reason is the lack of transparency,
Yeah.
especially around the jet propulsion and the detailed flight specs. When a company shows off something potentially this groundbreaking, being cagey about the basic technical details can sometimes suggest the tech isn't quite as mature or well understood as the marketing makes it seem.
Right. It can feel like they're prioritizing buzz over substance.
Exactly. It can
Right.
create that impression.
And the whole regulatory side of things for flying vehicles. That's a massive hurdle, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Aviation regulators like the FAA here, EASA in Europe, they have incredibly strict safety standards and certification processes for anything meant for public use. Getting approval for a totally new kind of vehicle, like a jet-powered hoverbike,
Yeah.
that would likely be a very long, very rigorous process. And there's no guarantee of getting the final okay for widespread public use.
Just look at the hoops flying cars are jumping through.
Exactly. That's a stark reminder of how tough those regulatory challenges are.
Then there's just the basic practicality question. Who's this actually for? And how would they realistically use it day to day?
That's a crucial point. The likely high cost, the probably short flight time, it makes it hard to see the airbike as a mainstream commuting option for the average person.
Seems more like a toy for the super rich.
It seems far more likely to initially appeal to a very niche market of extremely wealthy enthusiasts looking for a unique, thrilling recreational toy, rather than being a practical solution for everyday travel. Plus, the logistical challenges, where do you safely and legally fly it? Where do you even park it? Those are still big practical
And
questions.
safety has to
That's
be a
not
major concern. Open air design, jet engines. Sounds risky.
Indeed. The open cockpit leaves the rider totally exposed to airborne hazards, bird strikes, for example, especially at high speed.
Oof. Yeah.
Plus, the intense heat from the jets themselves is a significant potential safety risk. Sure, you'd need specialized protective gear, but even with that, the potential for serious injury in a crash seems considerable.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. As some analyses have noted, it's still a prototype. There's time for them to work on these issues, right? Like they did with the Jetson 1.
That's a very valid point. Prototypes are, by definition, works in progress. The challenges we're discussing, safety, efficiency, practicality, those are exactly the kinds of things engineers try to solve through testing, refinement, redesign. The fact that the Jetson 1 did go from prototype to a product you could actually buy,
Albeit an expensive one.
albeit an expensive one, yes, but it offers a degree of hope that the Airbike could potentially follow a similar path of development.
Despite all the very real skepticism and the practical hurdles, there's still that undeniable pull, isn't there? That almost primal dream of personal flight that the Airbike just taps into so powerfully. Why do we collectively want this to be real so badly?
It really taps into a fundamental human desire, I think, the wish to just break free from the ground. The whole idea of effortlessly soaring through the sky, no roads, no traffic jams, no speed limits. It has this incredibly powerful appeal to our imagination.
It's freedom, basically.
It represents more than just getting from A to B.
Yeah.
It embodies freedom, yeah. And the exciting prospect of seeing the world from a totally new, breathtaking perspective.
It's that ultimate escape, isn't it? A metaphorical, maybe literal middle finger to traffic jams and just the daily grind of ground travel. And the sheer adrenaline rush of flying that fast out in the open must be an experience unlike anything else.
Exactly. It's the promise of an exhilarating, deeply visceral experience. Beyond the practical stuff, it embodies this profound sense of adventure, a captivating break from the often boring reality of how we usually get around. It lights up that inner desire for exploration, for something extraordinary.
And if we really let our imaginations run wild, you can sort of picture the long-term possibilities. For personal mobility, maybe even how cities are designed, a world where the sky becomes a new, uncluttered way to travel.
Oh, that's still a pretty distant prospect, obviously. Huge tech and regulatory hurdles to overcome first. But that long-term vision of urban air mobility easing ground congestion, it's undeniably compelling. Innovative concepts like the Airbike, even if their first uses are niche, they could contribute to the broader understanding and development of the basic tech that might eventually lead to more widespread, practical personal flying solutions.
So let's try and wrap all this analysis up. What's our final take on the Volonaut Airbike? Is it a sci-fi dream about to become real, or is it maybe just an exciting but ultimately impractical gadget?
The evidence really suggests the Volonaut Airbike is a real working prototype. It's got some genuinely impressive features, and it has a credible, experienced inventor behind it. That counts for a
I hope.
lot. But there remain significant unanswered questions about its core technology, especially that directional jet propulsion system, and also about the critical issues of long-term practicality, operational safety, and that massive hurdle of getting regulatory approval for widespread use.
So real doesn't necessarily mean ready for prime time. It's maybe more like those amazing concept cars you see at auto shows. Looks incredible, hints at the future, but you won't be driving one off the lot next week.
Precisely. That complex journey from a working prototype to a commercially viable, widely available product, it's usually long and often full of unexpected problems. The time it took to get the Jetson one to market is a clear example of that reality.
Okay, so if you're excited about the Airbike and want to follow its progress, the best bet is probably keeping an eye on Volonaut's official website and social media. But maybe don't sell your car just yet.
That sounds like solid advice. Stay informed, definitely enjoy the cool videos they put out, and maybe start a very, very long-term savings plan if you really want one.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on. In some hypothetical future where this kind of personal flight tech actually becomes viable and, maybe even affordable, would you actually ditch your car for a hoverbike? Or would you still see it as more of an amazing, maybe once-in-a-lifetime kind of thrill ride? Something to think about. And on that note, perhaps keep those car keys handy for now. You might just need them to get to the next Star Wars convention.